Hey everybody, Fargo Monk here. A lot of videos on YouTube about the Suzuki V-Strom and removing the fairing and the cowling, fairing, whatever you want to call it. What there doesn't seem to be much of is videos on how to remove the left and right covers when you have the Givi crash bars installed. This is a 2012 1000 DL1000 V-Strom, and I'm going to show you how I get those side covers off without removing the crash bars. So look in the service manual on how to remove all of the screws. Again, I'm not going to go into how to remove the entire fairing. There's already service manual instructions on that. There's already YouTube videos on that. But let's get this stripped down to the point where we're trying to get these side covers off. The rest of it you can find in other videos. Now right here is the first tricky spot on the left hand cover. We've got one bolt down here with a 4mm hex wrench or Allen key. An Allen key may be the easiest way to get in there as far as just reaching the head of the bolt, but it's going to take a long time to get it out. What I use is a simple extension on the ratchet and a 4mm hex socket. And it's a little off center, but I can at least get it started. Once I've got it loose, I get that thing out of there and just go with the socket itself. And I'm still not dead on straight with that bolt, but I'm putting such little force into it that I can get it out easily enough. So, boom, there it is. Same thing on this right side. Go in with the long extension. I'm a little off center, but I'm gentle, just enough to get it loose. Get that ratchet out of there, bring it out a little bit more until my socket is hitting the crash bar, and then just work with the socket. You gotta baby it out of there. Nice and gentle, and don't be hard on the key, and it's out. One thing a lot of people will do is lay out bolts as they remove them in a pattern. They might take a shop towel like this and lay them in the pattern in which they came off the bike. And I think that's all fine and dandy. It's a good idea, except that you can knock your bench, you can accidentally swipe all of this off, and so I prefer to do it inside of a dish like this, and you can still get the same pattern going. Some of those are steel and some are aluminum, but at least they're in a tray. Whether or not they're sticking with the magnet or not, it doesn't matter. What's important to me is that if I bump this, they all stay together, and I'll put all of the screws and bolts that are critical to this particular section of the bike, in this case the cowling or the fairing, into this dish. And if I get into another system like the radiator, today what I'm doing is going in to check valve clearance on the valve tappets. So I'm going to go pretty deep in. I'll have to take the radiator apart. Radiator is going to get its bolts into a different dish, or you can use a Ziploc bag and label them. And also, don't be afraid to use your camera to take pictures. So once you've got these upper pieces loose, and you can take this up off of this metal bracket that runs in front of the gas tank. This is all tabs, and it's loose all the way down here. Still I haven't touched my crash bars, but be very careful that you don't miss this screw right up here in the front of this left hand side. There's also one on the right hand side, of course. Easy to miss it, and if you go pulling hard on this, it's going to snap it off on that tab, and you're going to have a broken fairing. So don't miss that screw. So I'm starting with the left side because this is easier for some reason, but I'm just going to take this thing out. There's one tab at the top that's holding it on, so now I'm completely free. And I can twist it a little bit. I do have to rub this matte finished piece of plastic against the inside of the crash bars, but the glossy plastic, I'm careful not to rub that on the crash bars. This matte against matte, I don't get a lot of scratching. It just doesn't matter. But with just a little gentle flexing in the right places, you can get that past the radiator and out. The left side's the easy one. This piece, the matte finished piece here on this cowling, is screwed in with 3 screws. There's 1 down here and 2 here. On the right hand side, I need to remove these with the fairing piece still on the bike but loose, and I'll show you the special screwdriver I use to do that. So for those 3 screws on the inside, I'm going to try to remove that matte finished piece of plastic and remove it from the larger piece of fairing plastic. And what I've got is a small little screwdriver. I've got a Phillips bit in it. So this thing is just a thumb screwdriver essentially. And you can get it into really tight places. I'm using a Phillips number 2, I believe. Yeah. So that's not a JIS screw. If it is, it doesn't seem to matter in this case, but it really doesn't appear to be. Look up JIS if you're wondering what that is. But that is the tool you need to get that separated on the right hand side without removing the crash bars. I'll show you how we use it. So I've got this piece completely loose on here. Again, being careful only to touch the matte finished piece of plastic against the bars themselves. I don't want to scratch my nice glossy finished piece. And the bottom screw is simple. That one you can reach easy enough. In fact, you really don't even need this thumb screwdriver to get it. What you need is better eyes than I have. But since I've already got this one in my hands, and that's out. Then I have to reach inside, and it's a little bit of a contortion, but it's not too difficult with that thumb screwdriver. This is going to take me a little bit because I can't get a lot of rotation on it with the position my hand is in. I'm only going maybe a 1/16 of a revolution each time I twist my thumb, but eventually it gets out. I'm going to have to edit this piece out. There. Number 2. And there it is. The 3rd screw. So now with the screws out of that piece, there are some snaps. Let me show you that on the other side. So there's a tab that's slotted over here, and there's a tab that slots up under here. I don't know if you can see that. These screws are all out now, and then there's finally a tab down here. And so you have to work those 3 tabs out of their slots to remove this matte finished piece from the larger piece. Actually, as I recall, you only need to get 2 of them out. Now I've got two out and that piece is loose. I should be able to wiggle this past the I take that back. I want to get the whole thing out. So now that piece is out. I've got two separate pieces here. I can slide out the larger piece, and then the smaller piece comes out the back side through here. So that is how you get the side covers off when you're removing the fairing on a DL1000 V-Strom. I don't know if it would be the same with the 650. The bars look very, very similar to me, but I really can't speak to that as I don't have a 650. And it's off. Putting it back together is a reverse of that process, and it is a bit tricky putting these two pieces back together on the bike and screwing those screws back in. But again, that short little snubby screwdriver, this is the guy you need. I think I paid $2.99 for this. Okay, so a few days have gone by because I had to get the engine apart, get the valve covers off, and order tappet shims, valve shims, with a lower measurement, lowered thickness, in order to widen the gap between the tappet and the valve. So that's how you make those adjustments, is by changing those shims. The shims are not stocked at my local Suzuki dealership, which I think is very strange since they're a commonly wear item. But so anyways, the best place to get them was off eBay, and they came pretty quickly, but I really only have time to work on the bike on weekends, so it had to wait. So I'm back, I'm wearing different clothes, and we're getting things buttoned up here. I've got the radiator back on, I've got the valve clearances all within spec, and valve covers back on. Had to take the cams out in this particular engine to do this. Not a big deal, but you really got to watch your service manual closely and make sure that you're aligning all of your timing marks. Check it again, and then check it again. Because the kind of damage you can do if you get it wrong is, well, significant. So anyways, I'm back to putting these covers on. So the left side, as you recall, came off pretty easily. I'm acting as if like it's been a long time for you. You guys are watching this straight through. As easily as it came on, or came off, it should go back on. We'll see. Maybe I should watch my own video and see how I got it off. The key is to make sure that when you are rubbing against the crash bar, you're just rubbing on this matte finished piece of plastic and keeping the nice glossy stuff from rubbing on anywhere. Which is exactly what I did, and it is on and in position. And I just need to get the other side buttoned up now and then put on the front piece of the fairing and put all the fasteners back in. So this side's initially going to be simpler in that we've got the matte piece of plastic separated from the glossy piece. And so without that in there, this guy slides on quite easily. But again, I want to be careful that I'm not rubbing that shiny plastic very aggressively against any of the against the crash bars. So I'm in place. I've got my little screwdriver, little thumb screwdriver, and I've got my 3 little screws. which I kept with the part. And I just gotta finagle this in. There are 3 tabs. There's a tab that goes in this area. There's a tab that slides right in here. And then, actually there's 2 tabs. And then this bottom screw here will connect. Actually, no, there are 3 tabs. There's another one that goes down here. I may shut the video off while I wiggle this thing in here, because it's a struggle. Actually, no, you need to see that I come from the back on this. So the part is in. Now, you bring these 2 together. The difficulty with the tabs is that you really need to kind of flex the 2 surfaces, and your clearances are pretty tight here. So it's this front one that's the most difficult to get on the bike. So I've already got the rear one in place. It's getting the front that's going to be tricky. There, it's in. And the bottom. There we go. 3 screws and a thumb screw. Simple, right? Getting it started is the toughest part. Once it's threaded, there, I got it straight. Then I can get the thumb screwdriver in there and slowly tighten that up. Just have patience with it. I can only get about 1/4 turn each time I rotate, and have to reposition my fingers to continue spinning it. So it takes a little time. Thankfully, it's not a very long screw. It's pretty short. So there's one. The bottom one's the easiest, of course. Got it. This one has a little better clearance. So I'll put it in most of the way with my fingers and then just snug it with the screwdriver. I can find the head of it again by feeling. That's kind of the trickiest part, is having the ability to feel your way around and visualize what you could see when the part was off the bike. And the last one just goes up underneath. Frankly, you don't need a thumb screwdriver for the bottom. That's it. Part is in. And again, there's a lot of other videos out there already on how to button up the rest of this, but I'll leave that to them. But the purpose of this video was just these side covers when you have the crash bars. So that's it. That's the guy you need. Be safe out there.